Okay, this is a HKS brand SSQV blow-off valve for your turbocharged car if you have one. If you don't have a turbocharged car, you don't need this. Okay. This is a short video explaining everything you need to know about how to put one of these on your car for the first time, what you need to put it on your car for the first time, and what you need to look for if your car, like this one is actually set up to vent the air that it blows off into the atmosphere. A lot of cars have a setup to where it doesn't have this open hole. It has a fitting to where you can slip a rubber hose over so that you can vent it back into your air intake system. Okay. Now that's not the way this one is set up. I actually don't have the fitting. I wish I did for the sake of this video, but I don't. But you can imagine there's just this little 3-star prong thing in the middle is not there on the fitting that I'm describing. It's a hole, and it comes out. It's a little lip that comes out about that far that you can slip the hose over. Okay, so for disassembling this guy, there's 8 screws. Don't lose them. You need every one of them. And I suggest after you take the screws out, they will be a little hard to come out because these little, actually these are 2.5mm metric hex key screws. So you need one of these tools. This was $8, $9 at Home Depot. Or you can just buy the little hex key set, but you want to use 2.5. Don't try to use the standard equivalent size. Don't try to find some standard size that'll fit, because you'll end up rounding out the little holes, or the little the head of this, so that you won't be able to get it out at all. You don't want to do that. Spend the money, buy the $10 tool, or buy the 2.5mm hex key. Okay, so you take this out. The threads of this guy, if I can focus on it, the threads of this guy actually kind of get stuck in the rubber on the inside of this. So don't worry, it's not anything you're going to damage on the rubber that it gets stuck in. But you can't just turn it upside down and shake it and expect the screws to fall out. All right. So when you take the screws out, I would suggest holding it this direction, where you have the bottom, where I have my pinky, facing down, not the bottom, but I guess the front of it, facing down towards the ground, and lifting up on it like this. Okay, so you have the shell in one hand and you have the BOV blow-off valve in the other hand. Okay, I would suggest doing it that way, because if you take it apart and you don't know what you're doing, you might get kind of startled, because these two things will fall out and you'll think like, oh, what's this stuff just falling out? I don't know where it goes. I don't know how it went in. So to avoid that feeling, I would suggest just taking it apart this way. Okay, you have this goes flat side down. Alright, it doesn't matter which direction, you can spin it any way you want to, as long as it's flat side down and as long as the holes line up with the holes down there. Okay, this guy is what you need to take out if you're recirculating into your air intake system. Okay, this is a cool little rim shaped one. They have different color ones that you can replace, different design ones that come with the SSQV2 and SSQV3. You can follow the same procedures in taking this apart if you have the SSQV2 or 3. I think there's a 3. I don't know if there's an SSQV3 out yet. I don't really follow this stuff as much. But like I said, the same installation procedures follow. Now you need to take it apart this far at least. So you, wait, sorry. So recirculating. So you put the little, you have to buy the other thing separately. It basically looks just like this, but it has an extended sleeve part that comes out that you can slip a rubber hose over, so you can recirculate into your air intake system. So instead of looking like this, you actually have the sleeve part that comes out that you can slip a rubber hose over, so that you can recycle the air that's blown out of this back into your air intake system, and it makes a little bit quieter blow-off valve. I have mine set up where it vents out into the atmosphere. I kind of like it better that way. I just rather just vent it out. It's just my personal preference. So you would take this out, you would put in the one that recirculates the air into it. Slip this on. Make sure the holes line up, like I said, otherwise you will not be able to get these little screws in and you'll be frustrated. So, like this, and I would suggest whenever you're putting it back together to hold this straight down, just like the way you took it apart, so that all the holes stay lined up like they're supposed to, and you drop it in, and then you hold it pressed together, and then you just screw the screws in individually. But you can't put this together until it is back on this, until it's back on the flange. Okay, you can see that these line up, these fit like that. There's an O-ring. There's an O-ring that goes here. So there's an O-ring right here that slips right in there. Okay. And you notice, if you know how to use snap ring pliers, which are these guys, you have to have them set up like this to where when you squeeze it, the ends come together. These are universal ones. I can switch them around with that little thing in the middle, so that I can make it where when I squeeze it they open up, or I can flip it over and make it where I squeeze it then it closes, right? It's easier to have these that have the straight tips versus the ones that have the bent tips. These I got from Napa for pretty cheap. You can it comes with a lot of different style tips. The bent ones, angled ones, straight ones. So, okay, so if you've used snap ring pliers before and you look at this and you think, how am I supposed to get the snap ring on, you know, like without taking this thing apart? Well, you can't. You have to take this thing apart. There's probably a way to do it with this thing together, but it's way easier if you take it apart. So just take it apart. When you put this on, keep in mind that you can't just point this in any direction. You can, it'll still function properly, but if you recycle the air back into your air intake system, you can't just point it in any direction because the hose isn't going to line up. You'll have to buy extra hose and bend it around, and you'll probably get kinks, and it'll just be a nightmare. It's way better for you just to do it this way. Okay, so basically you just angle it to whatever angle, whatever direction it's supposed to face, whatever direction you would have it to face, so that it mates up with the hose that recycles the air back into your air intake. Okay, so keep that in mind. Make sure you mark the direction. If you're just spinning out in the atmosphere like I am, then it's just a matter of preference. Okay, so what you don't want to do is you don't want to take this side apart, where these little it's the same size screws, 2.5 hex, but don't take this side apart. If you take this side apart, you're going to get into the internal side of the diaphragm, and you actually might mess something up. So don't take this apart unless you know what you're doing. If you're just curious and you want to take it apart to see how it works, don't do it. Find some other video of somebody that is taking one apart and just watch, because it's not worth messing up the blow-off valve. Okay. So yeah, back to this though. So you put the O-ring in. If you notice on the bottom, they have this little groove. Sorry, they have this little groove. Okay, what that's for is you can't just put the O-ring on without that groove. Okay, having that groove there lets you put the O-ring on, take it off as many times as you want. Alright. Sorry, not O-ring, snap ring. Some people call these a C-clip. It's not a C-clip, it's a snap ring. Alright. So you'll put this on, you'll push it down, because you've got a rubber seal down there, and I've got little screws in the way under this thing. Alright. So you'll push this down. Getting these out is kind of a pain too. Getting it in is just as much of a pain. I might not be able to do it for this video, but squeeze it. So close. So squeeze it together basically with your snap ring pliers. I'm not going to do it for this video, but you squeeze these two holes together with your snap ring pliers, and you slip it into the groove. Not with the blow-off valve out, with the blow-off valve in, where it's supposed to sit inside the flange. But you can see it sits under this groove. You can see it sits under this groove. If I can focus right, it sits in there. There's a groove underneath here, so the blow-off valve pushes against the O-ring and it makes a perfect little seal. Okay, so that's how you want it to mount. Post any questions, any things that I didn't address in this video, and I will be sure to... you need one of these if you're going to mount that blow-off valve. You can't mount it without it, because as far as I can tell, from what I've seen in the other blow-off valves, this design for this flat bottom is specific only to HKS. So you need an HKS style. You don't have to buy this from HKS. Plenty of people make them. Plenty of guys make them. But you do need this style. So that you can... Okay, so I stopped the video, and I actually took about 10 minutes to put this thing in. It's a little hard. I forgot how hard it was putting this thing back in. But this is it. It's back together. Snap ring is in. Okay, I just had to, while I was squeezing the snap ring pliers in these little holes here, I had to just take a flathead screwdriver and push down the back side of the snap ring, so I kind of had it held with my knees, and yeah. Alright, so putting this thing back together, just like I showed earlier in the video, what you want to do is line this up. Okay, make sure the flat side of this rubber piece is down. Make sure you have everything in. You don't really need this guy in. Sorry, you don't really need this guy in unless you have, I mean, you can have this thing that I have my thumb on. You can have nothing there. I would suggest at least having this there, so you can kind of protect the insides of this thing a little bit. Or you can have the one with the sleeve that comes out of the front that you can put the rubber hose on. Okay, but either way, all of those things will work, right? So, like I said, hold it down, and then you drop the BOV with the flange and everything on it. Hold it, and then you just spin it around. Okay, now you have it like this. It's a little hard to do on the camera, but you get the idea. Alright, so we got one in, and then what I'm doing is I'm putting one in the opposite side so that I can I'll have two screws that are holding this thing in completely. Okay, so it's not tight, it's still loose. Now I do that because you still want to be able to put the other screws in. If you tighten it down all the way, the rubber seal might not, you might have to shift it just a hair with the screws so that you can line up the rest of the screws and with the hole that they're supposed to thread into. If you have it tightened down all the way, like I said, the rubber hose won't. Alright, so I have two, and now it's just a matter of putting the rest of them in. I'm using kind of like a, I'm putting one in, and then I'm putting one in directly across, and then I go over two holes and I put another one in. Okay, but that's that. That is how you, let me just get this one. Right, so I have 4 screws in it right now. I'm going to put the rest of them in, but that's it. This is what it looks like when you're done. You have it on, and if you had the recirculation piece on the front, then you have a sleeve sticking out of here that you can put a rubber hose on, and hopefully when you did this, the blow-off valve didn't shift around. So you want to make sure you do have it pointed in the right direction so you can mount your hose. Otherwise you're going to be doing this all over again, and you're going to get really good at at taking off the blow-off valve and putting it on. But that's it. I love these things. By the way, this one I actually repaired with JB Weld. You can't see it that well, but this little nipple thing cracked off, right? And while I was fiddling with it, after it had cracked, I ended up pulling this thing out all the way, and two little metal pieces broke off of the housing. So I put JB Weld on the tip of this and saved the two little metal pieces and stuck them in the JB Weld and just let it sit for a couple days and harden. It's fine, works fine. I don't know how much boost it'll take, but I'm only going to be running about 12 pounds anyway, so that's that. That's it.